Welcome back, students. I hope you're all doing fine. Now, these are trouble times, but don't let it get on your nerves. Practice good hygienic habits and don't step out of your houses no matter how tempted you are. Let us start with today's work, the second and the last part of the story, Grandfather and the Python. We had read how Grandfather, upon opening the bathroom door, found that the snake had disappeared. The open window, he had concluded, must have been from where it had escaped. So we begin from page 71. I hope he isn't too hungry. I said we left the window open, said Grandfather, looking embarrassed. So we had read till this much. A careful search was made of the house, the kitchen, the garden, the stable, and the poultry shed, but the python couldn't be found anywhere. So everyone went around the entire house and the garden to check, but failed to locate the python. So Grandfather concluded that the snake must have gone far away by then. Grandmother was relieved. As we can see in the next line, he'll be away by now, said Grandfather reassuringly. I certainly hope so, said Grandmother, who was halfway between anxiety and relief. So we can make out Grandfather was definitely trying to find a peaceful, amicable end to the situation. So he concluded that the snake must have gone far away by then. And Grandmother was relieved when they did not find the snake anywhere, but a certain level of anxiety still remained. Who knows whether the snake would reappear or not. Hence, she was halfway between anxiety and relief. Aunt Mabel arrived next day for a 3-week visit. And for a couple of days, Grandfather and I were a little apprehensive in case the python made a sudden reappearance. But on the third day, when he didn't show up, we felt confident that he had gone for good. So apprehensive means being anxious or fearful about something bad or something unpleasant that might happen. So what was it that Grandfather and the narrator, they were apprehensive about? That the python might make a sudden reappearance. But when it didn't show up means appear. When it did not appear within a few days, in the next 3 days, it did not appear, they felt that they were confident that the snake had gone for good. Gone for good means gone and not coming back. See children, for good is an old English idiom which means forever or as a permanent status, that the snake, so here it means that the snake would not return. Now children, the things are going to get interesting from here onwards. Let us see what happens. And then towards evening, we were startled by a scream from the garden. So things have already started to happen. Seconds later, Aunt Mabel came flying up the veranda steps looking as though she had seen a ghost. So she was startled. Startled means feeling or showing a sudden shock or alarm. So a startled scream was heard and very soon Aunt Mabel was seen coming flying up the veranda steps. So came flying is a phrase over here. It moving at a great speed, almost like flying. Of course, Aunt Mabel wasn't actually flying, but she ran so fast back into the house that it seemed that she came at a flying speed. And then it seemed from her face that she had seen a ghost. So seeing a ghost is also a phrase. It means the appearance, that seems, the face looked so shocked and scared as if she had seen a ghost. Calm down, my dear, urged. Sorry, I missed out a line, children. In the guava tree, she gasped. I was reaching for a guava when I saw it staring at me, the look in its eyes as though it would devour me. So, in the guava tree. So she had seen something in the guava tree. We all know what she had seen. I was reaching for a guava when I saw it staring at me. The look in its eyes as though it would devour me. Devour. So she gasped. That is, she was trying to catch up with her breath with her open mouth because she'd been running. She was scared, and there was a sense of pain and astonishment in her voice. Uh, she thought that it would devour her. Devour means to eat or gobble up quickly. Calm down, my dear, urged grandmother, sprinkling her with eau de cologne. Come on, calm down and tell us what you saw. Okay, so eau de cologne means water for Cologne. It is a place in Germany, and it is basically a kind of a perfume, a much less concentrated version of a perfume from Cologne. Cologne is a city in Germany. These are actually made up of essential oils which have a calming effect on the nerves. So that is why grandmother sprinkled some of it on Aunt Mabel. A snake, sobbed Aunt Mabel. A great boa constrictor. It must have been 20 feet long in the guava tree. Its eyes were terrible. It looked at me in such a queer way. So she sobbed. That is, she cried noisily, making loud convulsive gasps and sounds. And to her, the snake was a great boa constrictor. Now, what is a boa constrictor? It's a species of a very large and large snake, a non-venomous snake, but it is a huge in size. It's heavy-bodied, and mostly it is found in South America. So, constrictor, the word constrictor means something that coils around an object and constricts it, cuts out the air supply. So, boa constrictor is a kind of a snake which preys on smaller animals by trapping it, by wrapping itself around the prey and squeezing the animal to death, cutting off the air supply, and then swallows up the prey whole. So to her, this snake, this young python, appeared to be a boa constrictor, and it looked at her in a queer way, in a strange way. So she tells that this is a great boa constrictor, it's 20 feet long. Clearly we see that this is an exaggeration. We know that the python was only a small one. It was probably around 4 feet long, we had been told in the beginning of the story. But to Aunt Mabel, it seemed to be 20 feet long. So what does this reveal about Aunt Mabel? See, earlier we were told that she was a very fussy woman, and that was the reason why grandfather and the narrator, they did not like her much. Now we also come to know that she had a tendency of exaggerating everything. Okay. My grandparents looked significantly at each other. Significantly at each other. See, it suggests that there was a lot of underlying words that was not getting spoken. They both knew something which Aunt Mabel did not. And what was it? It was the presence of the python in the household. So my grandparents looked significantly at each other, and grandfather said, "I'll go out and kill it," and sheepishly took hold of an umbrella, sallied out into the garden. But when he reached the guava tree, the python had disappeared. Of course, the python is not going to stay over there, not after so much of commotion. So grandfather said that he will go out and kill it, and he said sheepishly. Now sheepishly means like a sheep. Okay, from the word sheep, this word has derived. So it means embarrassed and not confident. But you know, he sallied out, he left in a determined manner. But was he really determined in killing the snake? What did he take along with him? He took an umbrella. So it suggests as if he was only jesting about it, he was only joking about it. Yes, I seem to have missed out the line. Yes, so he reached the guava tree, but the python had disappeared. And Mabel must have frightened it away, I said. "Hush," said grandfather. "We mustn't speak of your aunt in that way." But his eyes were alive with laughter. So we mustn't speak of your aunt in that way, as if he was trying to tell the narrator that you should show more respect to your aunt, you should not speak in this way. but it was mock respect. Why? How do we know that? Because the very next line says that his eyes were alive with laughter, as if they reflected a naughty expression. After this incident, the python began to make a series of appearances, often in the most unexpected places. Aunt Mabel had another fit of hysterics when she saw him admiring her from under a cushion. She packed her bags and grandmother made us intensify the hunt. So it gets more and more interesting. What happens after this is that the python begins to make a series of appearances. Every now and then it would be seen at the most unexpected places. You would not think that you could have a snake hiding in over there, but then it would just pop out. So Aunt Mabel had a next fit of hysterics. Fit of hysterics. See, the word fit itself means a sudden attack of convulsions, and hysterics is an expression of extreme fear and excitement in uncontrolled tear and sobbing and laughter all at the same time. So fit of hysterics, we can make out that she was acting in a strange way. She was having convulsions. She was expressing fear and excitement, and in the midst of all that, she did express that there was a snake around. So what did she see? When did she have this fit of hysterics? When she saw the snake admiring her from under the cushion. So the snake was peeping out from under the cushion. This was enough to make her pack her bags and get ready to leave. But grandmother at the same time made us intensify the hunt. That is, she made us increase the degree, the strength and degree of our hunting activity, that is searching for the snake. Next morning, when I saw the python curled up on the dressing table, gazing at his reflection in the mirror, I went to grandfather, but by the time we returned, the python had moved elsewhere. So the python was very quick at moving away. A little later, he was seen in the garden again. Then he was back on the dressing table, admiring himself in the mirror. Evidently, he had become enamored by his own reflection. Grandfather observed that perhaps the attention he was receiving from everyone had made him a little conceited. So, where did the narrator see the python a few days later? Okay, next morning itself, he saw the python curled up on the dressing table and staring at its own reflection, gazing at its own reflection in the mirror. So naturally the boy went and told his grandfather. When they came back, by that time the snake had disappeared. And soon it was seen out in the garden, but again back on the dressing table, admiring himself on the mirror. So the narrator's observation is that the snake had become enamored by his own reflection. Enamored here means fallen in love. It seems that the snake had fallen in love with its own reflection. Imagine how the situation is. A snake falls in love with its own reflection, with itself. Okay, so the grandfather observed that the attention that it was getting from all the people in the household, it had made him so proud that it was now staring at its own reflection, probably praising it in its own mind. It was praising it itself, how good it looked. He's trying to look better for Aunt Mabel, I said, a remark that I instantly regretted because grandmother overheard it and brought the flat of her broad hand down on my head. So he's trying to look better for Aunt Mabel. Earlier, the snake seemed to be smiling at Aunt Mabel. Now, the narrator observes that the snake was trying to look better for Aunt Mabel, and definitely he regretted saying this because his grandmother had overheard his words, and she was definitely not pleased by the situation. And the narrator, her husband, they were all taking the matter so lightly. She was definitely not happy about it, and that brought the flat of her broad hand down on his head. That is, he got slapped. So, yes. Now we know his weakness, said grandfather. So weakness here suggests the what was the snake's weakness? Its own reflection. Are you trying to be funny too? Demanded grandmother, looking her most threatening. So, as I said, that she was not happy with grandfather's action. Now she understands that the boy found it funny and he got reprimanded by the grandmother. She hit him with the palm of her hand. But she thought when grandfather said that we know his weakness, she thought that even grandfather was taking the situation very lightly. I only meant he was becoming very vain, said grandfather hastily. It should be easier to catch him now. So vain means proud. I only meant that he was becoming very proud and hastily. He said this hastily, hurriedly, trying to explain that he did not mean anything bad. He meant, or what he meant was all good. Now it's going to be easy to catch him. He set about preparing a large cage with a mirror at one end. In the cage, he left a juicy chicken and various other delicacies and fitted up the opening with a trapdoor. Aunt Mabel had already left by that time. By the time we had this trap ready, but we had to go on with the project because we couldn't have the python prowling about the house indefinitely. So grandfather set about to make a cage to catch the python. And in the cage, as a bait, he left a juicy chicken and various other delicacies. Now, other delicacies would refer to things that a snake might be attracted to. Of course, not delicacies, things which are delicacies for you and me. And then he fitted the cage with a trap door. Now, what is a trap door? A trap door is a door-like opening in the floor or the ceiling of a room usually. But in this case, it was fitted to the cage. So a door is an opening on the side or on the walls, but a trapdoor is one in the roof or in the floor of it. So they prepared this cage with a trapdoor, but Aunt Mabel had already left by that time. Still, they had to go on with the project because they could not have a python prowling about in the house indefinitely. Prowling about means, you can see in the glossary, it means moving quietly around in an area, stealthily, moving quietly and stealthily around in an area. Now, what problem would they have faced if the python was in the house? It would create a lot of inconvenience. If you have a snake moving around, see, snake is not a cat or a dog that moves around and you don't face any problem. It would obstruct people in their work. It is not a venomous snake, agreed, but like the boa constrictor, it can also constrict around a living creature and squeeze it to death. Normally, pythons don't attack humans, but they would do so if they feel threatened or if they mistake the hand or a leg for their food. So, nevertheless, a snake is a wild animal, and the place for the snake should be in the forest and in the jungle. So they kept searching for the snake. For a few days, nothing happened. And then, as I was leaving for school one morning, I saw the python curled up in the cage. He had eaten everything left out for him and was relaxing in front of the mirror with something resembling a smile on his face. If you can imagine a python smiling. I lowered the trapdoor gently, but the python took no notice. He was in raptures over his handsome reflection. Grandfather and the gardener put the cage in a pony trap and made a journey to the other side of the riverbed. They left the cage in the jungle with the trapdoor open. So what happens over here? For a few days, nothing happened. They had set the cage out for the python to enter, but nothing happened for some days. And then one morning when the narrator was leaving for school, he saw the python curled up in the cage. Why? Because there was the bait of the juicy chicken and other delicacies, and there was also a mirror in it. So it had eaten up all the food that was there, and now it was staring at its own reflection as if it was smiling. There seemed to be an expression that resembled a smile. So if you can imagine a python smiling. The narrator gently lowered the trapdoor so that the snake would not escape again. But the python took no notice. It was so engrossed in its own reflection that it took no notice that some movement had happened around it. He was in raptures. Now, raptures means a feeling of extreme pleasure. If you remember, you've come across this word in the poem Lines Composed in a Wood on a Windy Day by Anne Bronte. Over there in that poem, the poet tells us that the wild roaring wind arouses the earth and the seas to a rapture. What did it mean over there? A feeling of extreme pleasure and happiness was experienced by the various elements of earth and the seas. So in this case, the python seemed to be extremely satisfied and happy. Of course, there was so much of food. It had just eaten a lot of food, so it was satisfied and happy to see its own beautiful reflection. Now the python was trapped in the cage, and grandfather and the gardener put the cage in a pony trap. What is a pony trap? It's a light horse-drawn carriage, a pony-drawn carriage. Usually it has 2 wheels and 2 to 4 people can sit in it. You know, it's basically a vehicle which used to be seen in the Indian context in the earlier times. In Hindi, it is called tanga, and the English word, the word tanga has also been absorbed in English language. It's pronounced as tonga, spelled as Tonga. If you check it up on the internet or if you check it up in the dictionary, you will get a reference to it. So the cage was put on a pony trap and they journeyed to the other side of the river bed. They left the cage in the jungle with the trapdoor open. So other side of the riverbed means towards the jungle. The river would be a natural barrier which the snake would not cross unless it would be forced to. So, and the jungle would be a natural habitat for the snake. So the trapdoor was kept open so the snake could move out. But of course, grandfather did not rush the snake to move out. What does he say? He made no attempt to get out, said grandfather later. And I didn't have the heart to take the mirror away. It's for the first time I've seen a snake fall in love. So for the first time he had seen a snake fall in love, and that made him empathetic, that made him feel for the snake, and so he did not feel like taking the mirror away. The snake seemed to be so much in love with its reflection that the grandfather did not wish to take away the mirror. He just left the trapdoor open and moved away. It's the first time that he has seen a snake falling in love. So students, with this we come to the end of this story. I hope you found the explanation interesting. In my last video, I had promised that I will give out some important questions. So it would be a good thing if you prepare yourself on the various characters in the story. What kind of a person was grandfather, what kind of a person was grandmother, Aunt Mabel, and how does the situation get complicated after Aunt Mabel comes to stay with the narrator's family, the description of the python. Now this should, your answer should include its appearance as well as its mannerisms, the various points regarding its mannerisms that we have come across in the story. And what efforts were made to catch the snake, why was it important to catch the snake. You should mention the risk of having a snake in the household, within the household, what I mentioned today, as well as the harm that it could cause to the poultry. Nevertheless, in spite of everything, the snake, yes, the snake was not venomous. So what? It is a wild creature and will be having some wild tendencies. So it's always safe not to have a snake in the household. So your answer must include these points. And finally, do look up the meanings of all the difficult words in the text. It is important to know the meanings of every word when you read, so that it gives you a better understanding of the text. That would be the end of this lesson. Do stay tuned to my channel, children, for other topics that will be uploaded very soon. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day and see you soon. Bye bye.